Next up, we have Rachael Byrne from PagerDuty, and she's going to tell you how to make your team more efficient in a critical scenario, and many various other things. So, Rachael, round of applause.
Imagine this. You just got paged in the middle of the night for a service that you didn't build, so you're not exactly sure how to diagnose the problem, let alone fix it. So you start fishing for people from various teams, desperately trying to find someone who can help, adding them to a conference line, slowly getting more frustrated and resentful. And then it's total chaos. You have 20 people on a conference line. People are talking over each other. You're not sure who's doing what, so you don't know what's actually having a positive effect. Hours go by, and you still don't have a solution. Panic sets in, and people are yelling at each other. Finally, your CEO gets word of the outage, tracks down that conference line, and dials in to demand why it isn't fixed yet. Does any of that sound familiar? I think most of us have an on-call nightmare like that. When you experience an incident like this, every minute counts. Downtime can mean losing customers, which affects your bottom line. Not to mention the extreme human cost of waking everybody up for this really stressful situation. So it's important to have a streamlined approach so you can come to the fastest resolution, minimizing your time to resolution and the cost of the incident. So today I'm going to talk to you a bit about what skills are really important to lead during this very stressful time, and once you've found folks with those skills, how to actually train them so they're prepared to lead. But before we get into that, let's get some definitions out of the way. A major incident is any unplanned service outage that actively affects your customer's ability to use your product. Some more operationally mature companies may have a formalized incident response process. This is essentially a runbook for how to behave during a major incident. It defines who needs to be involved, what roles they take, how decisions are made, how communication should take place during the major incident. And most incident response processes will have a formalized role called the incident commander. They lead the response effort. They're the key decision maker, and they keep communication flowing. Now, whether or not you have a formalized incident response process today, it's pretty common to assume the person best suited to lead during a major incident would be a senior technical leader. They have the authority to tell people what to do, and the expertise to understand the system and get you to a resolution. The problem is, this isn't scalable. If a small group of senior technical leaders are responding to every major incident, they're going to burn out. So I'm here to tell you, you can streamline your incident response process by welcoming non-technical people to serve as incident commanders. And I'm proof that this can be done without compromising response effectiveness. So who am I? I'm a bit of a business cat. My background is mainly in project management, product management. I joined PagerDuty 3 years ago as a Scrum Master originally, and now I do stuff like this. And I am PagerDuty's first non-technical incident commander. So I'm going to talk to you about the skills that are really important for a good incident commander. And a bit of a spoiler here, none of these skills are technical skills. You don't have to be an engineer to be a good incident commander. Now, although I am arguing you don't have to be highly technical to lead during a major incident, I will say it's important to have a high-level understanding of your system architecture. You should understand at a basic level what your services do and how they affect your customers. So for me, this was just a matter of staring at our system diagram for a really long time. I actually made flashcards to try to memorize the silly names of each of our services, the silly names of each of the teams that own those services, and what those services do from an end user perspective. The point here is that you don't have to understand how to build or fix any of these services. You should just have a high-level understanding of how data flows through your system, and if one of those services fails, how that affects your customers. So let's get into it. First, great skill for an incident commander is you want someone who has a mind for process. Your incident response process is going to be a highly structured way of working. So you want someone who is really good at remembering and enforcing that process. You need someone who's going to remember who needs to be involved, what they're supposed to be doing, and the very specific communication patterns you should be following so you can be as efficient as possible. Now, this is a core competency of project managers. But there may be other people on your teams who really thrive in this highly structured situation that could work really well within an incident response system. Next really important skill is communication, but it's a specific type of communication. Your incident commander should be really comfortable with a directive style of communication. During a major incident, the incident commander becomes the highest ranking individual on the call, even higher than your CEO. Of course, this requires buy-in from your executives in advance. You don't want your CEO to join a response call and be surprised that the incident commander is making the shots, not them. But you need someone in the incident commander role that's going to be comfortable telling an executive to get off the call if they're being disruptive, telling maybe their boss or the tech lead on their team what to go and do. You also need an incident commander who's really good at a type of facilitation that will prevent the group from spending too long debating what they should do. You want to facilitate the sharing of information, and then based on that information, you make a decision and you keep things moving forwards. You also, another really key communication pattern here is you always want to be really specific about who you're telling to do what. You never want to say, hey, can someone look into these logs for me? The bystander effect comes into play here. If you ask someone to help, chances are no one's going to help you. Best case scenario, someone does what you ask, but you have no way of knowing who's doing it, when they started, who to check in with, and when. So you always want to be really specific about, Dave, I need you to log into the server, check the logs for me, and get back to me in 5 minutes. Understood? Clear and concise. Now, this directive style of communication is actually my natural communication style, which I have found is not always appropriate at work, especially working in certain team situations. So this is actually a really great outlet for me to use this style where it's really helpful. So think about folks in your organization who take this more directive leadership style. We've seen a lot of success with people managers and with product managers who are really used to making decisions, telling people what to do. It is an asset during a major incident. Next, you want someone who's really good at keeping track of time. You may recall from the example where I told a specific person to do a specific task for me, I gave them a time box. So you need someone who's always going to remember, I'm giving you a time box, I'm keeping track of those time boxes, and I'm going to check back in with you at the end of that time box. This keeps a regular cadence of action and communication, makes sure things are moving forwards, and we're getting the results of the experiments that we're running to try to solve the problem. This is another core competency of project managers, but there may be folks in your teams who are always keeping their mind on the time, on the deadlines, checking in on how far along they are, and so forth. That's a really good skill for an incident commander. Now, I just talked about a few skills that are very structured, very directive. All of that's important, but it needs to be balanced with active listening skills. First, even with a mature incident response process, there's going to be a certain amount of chaos. There's a lot going on. You need someone who is simply able to keep track and hear everything that people are saying and what's going on. Next, you need someone who's going to be humble enough to listen to expert feedback. Especially when you're working with an incident commander who is not an engineer, they're going to rely heavily on the responders, the expert service owners, to give the information you need to make a decision as an incident commander. And this is really easy to do. You ask your experts for proposals of what we could do to try to mitigate the issue, and then you drill in and ask questions to make sure you fully understand those proposals. You want to understand the potential risk, the expected impact, And based on that information from your experts, that's how you make a decision as an incident commander and move forwards. Now, when I was still in training, I talked to a director person in our engineering org about this insecurity I had about not always fully understanding everything that the service owners would say during a major incident. And he actually told me that not fully understanding the technology is actually an asset for an incident commander. He said that he constantly has to be checking his bias. His technical knowledge will lead him to suspect that we should investigate in a certain direction, but that may actually be misdirecting the investigation. He needs to check that constantly and rely on the experts in the services about what we should do next. Because I'm not an engineer, I don't have that problem. But you need someone who's going to be humble enough to admit, I don't understand what that means, I need you to explain it to me. And the act of getting your service owners to explain that proposal and the expected impact actually benefits everyone on the call. Not every service owner will understand every service. And asking those drill-down questions to help me understand also helps the responder think through their own proposal. So a lack of technical expertise can actually be an asset for your incident commander. So here's a summary of the top skills for an incident commander. It's a good photo slide if you wanted to take home some photos. We will be posting the slides afterwards as well. But the key here is, notice, none of these are technical skills. There's plenty of people in your organization that may be more junior or outside of an engineering function that will be really strong in these areas. As I said, project managers are a really good fit. People managers, product managers can make really good incident commanders, but think more outside of the box. Maybe your QA engineers aren't typically involved in incident response, but they're really good at working in that structured process, really good at keeping track of time. They could be a great fit to get involved with your incident response process. But once you've identified those people in your organization with those strengths, you've got to train them, right? It's a critical role that means the success or the delay of the resolution of a major incident that's affecting your bottom line minute to minute. So it's really important to get them fully up to speed and comfortable in this highly stressful situation. And I would argue for people outside of engineering, it's an even larger hurdle because there's this imposter syndrome that I could never understand what happens during a major incident. I couldn't possibly help you. So it's really important to train them thoroughly and in a really friendly way that makes them feel supported. So I'm going to walk you through the training process that I went through at PagerDuty to become an incident commander. You need to start by specifically defining the incident commander role. And we've refined the role over time, and yours might be slightly different from ours, but the key distinction that we make is that the incident commander is not responsible for finding the solution to the problem. They should not be logging into any servers, looking at any logs, no investigation tasks for the incident commander. They're responsible for coordinating the response. They make all the decisions, but then they delegate all tasks, which means they're not doing those tasks themselves. The coordination and communication effort is enough cognitive load for any one person. Trying to add on investigation tasks is just too much. So this division of labor is really important. And by dividing the coordination and communication tasks over to your incident commander, that actually frees up your responders to really focus on solving the problem. They don't have to deal with communicating with stakeholders. The incident commander will take care of that. And this specific definition frees up the role to be taken by non-technical folks. So a general good practice here is to host regular office hours to explain your incident response process. Now, I like to say that incident response is not an engineering problem. Your entire company has a stake in what happens when there's a major incident. For example, customer support needs to understand how you typically respond because they will inevitably get support tickets that they're going to have to answer about a major incident. But it can go beyond that. Marketing would benefit from understanding incident response because they may want to pause some of their planned marketing communications based on if there's a major incident and the nature of that incident. It may actually be an asset to your sales team to be able to talk about how efficiently you respond to major incidents. And finally, even finance. They have to manage sometimes penalties for downtime. Having a good understanding of what happens during a major incident will help them do their job better as well. So I invite the organization to this regular office hours where we can explain to them why incident response matters in their function, just walk them through our process, and this becomes your opportunity to explain the incident commander role, the need for more help, and the fact that you don't have to be an engineer to help in this role. So once you've hooked a prospective incident commander that understands the need and expectation for their help, you can put them on a schedule to shadow the incident commanders. Now, especially for non-engineers, this is probably their first time going on call, so giving them just some basic experience about what it's like to get paged will help them build a little on-call empathy. But you want to make clear that when they get paged, they should dial in to listen in, but they need to listen silently. Asking any questions during a major incident is going to distract from the response effort. That's a bit harsh, so you always want to make yourself available to them after resolution to see if they had any questions about what they heard, why we did things a certain way, to make them feel like their learning is really supported. Now, a scribe is another formalized role in an incident response process. They're responsible for keeping a real-time log of everything that happens during a major incident. We just do this in a Slack channel. And it's a really great low-risk way to invite a trainee to start helping during a major incident. This was actually the first time that I got involved, and it was the first time that I felt like, oh, I really can help during a major incident. It's low risk because it's not the end of the world if you miss something that someone says or you got the name wrong. But keeping that real-time log is incredibly valuable after the resolution when you're analyzing for your postmortem. And the simple act of writing down everything that happens really cements your knowledge of the process. So it's a great training mechanism. You may be familiar with Netflix's Chaos Monkey. So this is the process of intentionally injecting failure in your systems to test resiliency. And at PagerDuty, every Friday, we plan out an exercise where we pick a service, take it down, see what happens. But it's heavily orchestrated, it's during business hours, and we actually treat these exercises as if they were a real incident. So we have an incident commander and we follow our incident response process. It's a great way to test not only the resiliency of your technology, but your incident response process as well. So we ask our incident commanders in training who would like to volunteer to be an incident commander for this week's Failure Friday exercise. And it's a great way to get really hands-on practice of being an incident commander. Now, after your trainee has listened into a few calls, maybe jumped in as a scribe, and has practiced in a Failure Friday exercise, then you want to hook them up to reverse shadow a real major incident. So you put them on the main schedule, so they're going to get paged when there's a major incident. They're expected to join the call and announce that I am now the incident commander. But you assure them they will not be alone. You pair them up with a buddy who's more experienced being an incident commander. They also get paged, also dial in, and will support the trainee however is needed. So the trainee, you need to let them lead. They are the incident commander. There's only one. But the more experienced incident commander can send them tips and reminders in the background. And this is incredibly helpful to just get a little encouragement, to bounce ideas off of somebody, to make sure you're following the process. It's really helpful to have that buddy in the background. But meanwhile, your trainee is getting real, actual experience as an incident commander and building credibility among all of the responders. And then you celebrate. Your trainee has successfully led during a major incident. They're now a fully fledged incident commander, which means they're increasing the resiliency of your service. It means lower on-call load for the rest of your incident commanders. And today, I'm actively recruiting even more incident commanders because it'll mean less on-call load for me. So here's a breakdown of all of the phases of the incident commander training. Remember, the key distinction is the incident commander is not responsible for resolving the issue. This is what opens it up to non-technical people to serve. You can host regular office hours to explain incident response to your entire organization and try to recruit people outside of engineering to serve in this role. Then you have them experience on-call, but silently. Maybe have them help out as a scribe and then practice during a Failure Friday exercise. And finally, you let them reverse shadow where they act as the incident commander, but they have help in the background. And I want to reiterate that throughout this process, I was fairly nervous. It's a business critical role in which I felt like I didn't have a lot of expertise. So having the encouragement of the other incident commanders was so critical for me to overcome that fear. And today, I feel like I'm a part of this community of incident commanders. In DevOps, we talk a lot about empathy. It's all about breaking down those functional silos between the developers and your operations engineers. But I think we should expand this collaborative mission beyond just dev and ops, but across the entire organization. So technical and non-technical folks alike can be helping each other when it really matters. Now, if you want to learn more about how we do incident response at PagerDuty, I really barely scratched the surface here. We've actually open sourced our incident response documentation at response.pagerduty.com. It's a great starting point if you're trying to develop your own incident response process internally. And if you want to talk more about incident response or how to welcome non-engineers into the DevOps community, I'm around all afternoon and tomorrow. Come find me. I'd love to chat. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Rachel. We actually have time for a couple questions, so if anybody has questions, give me a hand.
So when you're doing incident response, what is the first thing that you do? Like, what's the first question that you ask?
The first step is what we call sizing up. You basically want to get the observable symptoms. So I get on and I ask, is there another incident commander? No, okay. I announce I am the incident commander. And then I ask, what can we observe? What's happening? Why did you trigger incident response? To just start getting that information.
Okay, and then I guess, I don't know, in general, what's the flow that you go through? I guess I should have just said that to begin with.
Sure, at a high level, you start by sizing up, and then you ask for proposals of what we could do, not should do, but what could we do. You drill down to understand the expected impact of those proposals. The incident commander makes a decision, assigns it, sets a time box, and then checks back in, and then it repeats. What's the observable symptoms now? What should we do next, and so forth.
Any more questions? Yeah, over here.
How much emphasis do you put on root cause analysis during the event, or do you just try to resolve and do that in the aftermath?
Yeah, during the event, none. We're trying to target what we can do to stabilize the system. We're not trying to figure out what initially caused the problem. That's something that we would do after resolution with the postmortem.
What about destroying logs or anything that might have occurred naturally during the process that you wish you had after the fact?
That would be, if I get a proposal, I would ask, is there a downside to this? And if that's a potential issue, I would have to weigh that as the incident commander if it's worth losing data or not.
I was wondering if you find that people skip the post-mortem process. Do you
Never.
find you don't?
It is required.
How do you reinforce that? Is the light shine upon it during the process, or?
It's within our process. For our incident response process, at the end is you do the postmortem. The incident commander is actually responsible for opening the postmortem, not filling it out, but opening it, assigning an owner, And then we have a business rule for a major incident. I believe it's within 3 days, 3 business days. You need to schedule that meeting, have the postmortem populated by then. We get together and talk about it. So it's part of the process.
Okay, thanks.
Hello. My question is about how do you take somebody from being that their training to be an incident responder to like, do you have a committee that decides this person's deemed ready, or they do one shadowing and then they're ready, or is there any kind of process around promoting them?
Well, we don't force anyone to be an incident commander. If they don't want to do it and they don't feel ready, that's not going to be good for anyone. So it's really about coaching and support, encouragement, and understanding when they feel confident enough, and then they put themselves on the main schedule, but always they'll have someone in the background to help them out.
Okay. Well, let's give her another round of applause. That was awesome. Thank you very much.